Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Humanity Matters. Tonight we have special guests for you. If you tuned into our last episode that we had, you're introduced to, if you're new, you're introduced to our special guests tonight. If you tuned into our last episode, they're back. And tonight's episode is called MUFON Investigators, and I'm going to introduce you to our guests. On my right is John Ventry, and we have Fred Saluga, and former pirate George the Doc Medich, who is also a MUFON investigator.
And a doctor.
And a doctor. And I'm going to introduce you to our host of tonight's show, Albert Turcasso.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? We're live again for a couple of times around. Now, I just got information about my series time slot. I haven't gotten a chance to look at it, so I'm not sure in July when we're going to be on, but we will be back. So for any of you out there that don't want me to be back, I'm back. I'm sorry, I had to do that. I just had to do that because I'm like that. I like to have fun. But at any rate, we have an extremely special show tonight. And of course, as Annette told you, George is a MUFON investigator, and he's in charge of, I believe, abduction research. And of course, we have PA's director and regional director here. So it's on. How can we say it? It's on. We're going to talk about things that probably going to shock you. But I just want to say, remember to call 412-231-2288 with your questions. And I would like them all to be UFO or possibly Bigfoot related, or who knows what's going to happen. Fred wants to talk about a little guy named Bigfoot, but we'll see what happens. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Annette Mendel, and we'll see what happens. So tune in and start calling.
Okay, I have a special letter here that John Ventry presented to me this evening. It's from a CIA agent. He's anonymous, but I'm going to read you part of his letter. It says, "You can't really know my name. I am one of the CIA's anomalous sighting investigators. I live in Western Pennsylvania, but work a lot in the Philadelphia area. BTW, don't buy it when you hear the CIA has no interest in UFOs. That's a joke. We have 41 agents investigating UFOs, anomalous sightings, as we call them. Also, field agents like myself are actually happy MUFON exists. The truth needs to be out there that not only are we not alone, but we owe much of our technological advances in the past 60 years to 5 friendly alien species. Please keep doing what you folks are doing. And for the record, I actually saw the original Roswell files. They are in the CIA archives. No way to copy them or release them, but Roswell really happened. Bodies of aliens were found, 2 saucers crashed, and 1 hovering intact above the ground with the crew dead inside. The medical doctor opined that the aliens had no immunity to our airborne pathogens. Cordially, a friend in the agency, John Doe."
I think that's significant because in 1979, through the Freedom of Information Act, the CIA released thousands of documents. And in those documents, there were numerous correspondence talking about UFOs. There's actually letters in there where the CIA and the FBI were talking back and forth to each other about investigating UFOs. And I also put those in my most recent book, An Alternative History of Mankind. But the CIA is involved in UFOs. It's a very important subject. And when I received this letter about 6 weeks ago, it didn't surprise me one bit.
All right. And Annette, you have your first question for John?
Yes, that's interesting, being that the government is so hush-hush about UFOs actually existing, that they're involving themselves in investigations and that. What do you think of that?
Well, they have to be involved in it, but they don't want the public to know about it. And that's the thing about this subject, that when I got involved, the more I looked, the more I found. So there are hundreds of documents, and in my opinion, it's all about the technology. We want to get our hands on the technology and back engineer it, just like he says in the letter that that's how we got some of our technology. But I think the question becomes, can they tell the public? Can the people handle the truth? And if it's something simple, like they look like us and they just arrived here and they're going to give us some technology, then everybody's okay with that. But if they have other motives and reasons for being here, when you look at the whole abduction thing that Doc Medich is going to talk about, I mean, come on, they show up at night, they knock you out, they abduct you. It's basically a kidnapping and a rape, is what goes on. And
No.
we tell people to, report it to the police, because it doesn't appear. It seemed like in the 50s, I read a lot of the older books, and it seemed like in the 50s that a different species was here, and they were not hostile. They were here just to observe. And even a lot of the reports you read back from Major Kehoe and others said that they're not a threat. They don't even fire on us as we try to fire and shoot them down. There's no case of them firing and taking us, down on purpose. So, but I think that species has left, and now you have a different species that's here, and that's where you see this prominence of abductions, and a lot of the cases we get it doesn't leave a warm and fuzzy feeling.
Right. I've always been fascinated with UFOs since I was a kid. What's your take on star people? Are there really star people among us?
Well, when you read about that, the indigo people, the star children, they were supposedly born since 1982 is when these star people, and what people say it's a hybrid species that has bred with us. So there's hybrid humans that are part extraterrestrial, and they're smarter than us. If you look at the kids, they're very technologically savvy. They don't follow the rules like we did, and they're different. So it's almost like a new species of human since 1982. So
I was a teenager in '82.
I wasn't born yet.
Oh.
No.
Smart hands. You almost fell for her.
She fell for that.
She did. I'll tell you, I can't believe that one.
If I used Just for Men, she would have.
No, I'm not commenting on that one, Sean. What about Just for Alien? That maybe you have to use that. Are you sure you're not an alien masquerading as a MUFON investigator?
I read that after 1947 with Roswell, that possibly all of us born after 47
are aliens.
Hybrids.
You're not
that their
funny, man.
DNA has been
I'm not a
integrated
freaking
into
alien
us.
yet.
I can
You're
believe
older
he's
than
an alien.
1947? It's possible.
Did you hear what she just said?
I'm just kidding.
She said she could believe I'm an alien.
I'm just kidding.
I told you the last time we were on a couple months ago, you shouldn't be blowing my cover like that. Shut up. Oh, my goodness. Now, there are people on Jupiter, but we won't go there.
There are?
No comment. We won't go there, right, John? But at any rate, now, a little bit more seriousness. And I think that it's only right to start this one with, well, actually, last time I started with Fred, so I'll start with you. Okay, I have here UFOs, what's going on in Pennsylvania? So we live in the Pittsburgh area. Although we are global wide, because we're on the internet at pctv21.org. We're here live June the 10th, 2014. And if you're tuning in, you can watch us anywhere on the globe, as long as you remember 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But start calling us at 412-231-2288. At any rate, we're in here in Pittsburgh. What is, other than, what's that, Ketchburg was in PA, I guess, right?
Kecksburg.
Kecksburg. Other than that, in the last, let's say, year to 5 years, what's actually going on in PA? What bona fide, unidentified flying objects, aliens, whatever, have happened in the Pittsburgh regional area. And I'd like you to elaborate on that, and then I want you to turn it over to Fred and George to give their opinion of what's going on, or maybe you guys can do
I'll
a
give you an
collaboratory.
overview, and then I'll turn it over to Fred.
But because I want to know what's going on, and also how worried should people on this planet be? So that could be the follow-up. Let's go with what's going on, and then the follow-up should be how worried should we be?
Okay.
So how about maybe Fred and George can take the
Let me give an
word.
overview, and then we'll just turn it
Yeah,
over.
give an overview. Come on, we're facing daylight here.
Fred's got some particular cases he's going to
All right.
talk about, but I took a look at this year, and in the last 3 months, we had 31 cases. 14 are considered close encounters of the second and third kind. So the person actually saw the craft, let's say, below cloud level. So it's not just a bright light in the sky that they saw.
Right, they
and
saw
don't
it close.
they saw something that's definitely not ours.
Okay.
And that's a change from last year. Last year we had 323 cases. We only had 4, maybe 5 that were that type.
Right.
And we're running 45% of those cases this year since the show aired.
Wow.
And some of them are historical, where people feel comfortable now
Right.
to come forward and report what happened 20
Right.
years ago. But when you ask the last 5 years, we've been getting about 95 cases a year. That changed in 2008.
Okay.
In 2008, there was a UFO wave across the state, started in Eastlake, Ohio,
Okay.
Pittsburgh area, out to Bucks County. Since the summer of 2008, we've been getting over 300 cases a year across the state.
Now, how many of them turn out to be legitimate, for lack of a
So it
better
more
term?
than
Credible.
tripled. The credible, I would say, that year, there was a lot we couldn't explain.
Okay.
There was probably 30% we couldn't
All right.
explain. But generally, it's about 10% that are the ones that you just say, wow, what is that? 80% can be explained, 10% are hoaxes, and you got about 10% that are the good ones. And Fred's got some particular cases.
All right, well, let's go to Fred, and then right after that, we're gonna have Fred actually answer this call that came in. So, do you want to answer the call or do the follow-up thing first?
Do the call.
You want to do the call first?
No.
Well, go for it. You gotta say it.
Yeah, hello?
This is Diane. I'm the sister. I have a question for George. What year was you on the Pittsburgh Pirates, and why did you switch over to the UFO stuff? I never see it in my own backyard. So what year was you on the Pittsburgh Pirates, George? This is for George.
Okay,
only.
all right, Diane, let me
Can you hear me,
answer the
George?
question.
Yeah, I played for the Pirates in 1976.
Who was your favorite player?
My favorite player when I played for the Pirates? Probably the guy that
Not
drove in the
yourself.
most runs for me that day.
Different people.
We had a lot of good players on the team that year. We had
Did you
Willie
think
Stargell
it
was our
for,
leader, and we had a lot of good players.
Or Clemente or Ball or
I missed Roberto Clemente by a few years. I played with Willie Stargell and Manny Sanguillen, Richie Zisk, Dave Parker, Al Oliver, Rennie Stennett. Those are the guys I played with.
Okay, but when did you start talking about UFO stuff? My brother wanted me to answer about UFO stuff.
Yeah, I got involved with MUFON a few years ago.
You should
after
have talked about the baseball stuff.
I had no more baseball.
baseball. What she want?
She said something about baseball. I want to talk about MUFON.
Ask me the question again. I didn't quite hear you.
Well, okay, what year did you talk about the UFO stuff? You should have kept the subject about baseball. I like baseball more about UFOs.
I see. Well, I'm here with MUFON on the MUFON show, so I'm afraid we're going to have to stick with UFOs
Exactly.
mostly.
Well, go ahead and answer the question.
What year, George, did you get involved with
How did you start
UFOs?
with?
I started with MUFON, I think 4 years ago.
Okay. So that's good. So we're going to go ahead and move on, Diane.
All right, but he should have talked about.
All right,
more
forget
this.
about it.
Be interesting
Forget about it, John.
maybe.
Well, that's your opinion, Diane.
All right, we had to do a forget about it. Sorry, guys, but this is a MUFON show, although I'm glad that you answered that about when you were, who you were working with back in the day. So, George, you're going to fill us in on a little bit on what's been going on. And I'm sorry, Fred, And then George is going to give us some information about abductions.
Well, this year so far, we've had statewide 114 cases. And the Pittsburgh area, we had around 40. All right,
Okay.
we've had abductions. The biggest thing we have is orbs. These orbs vary in size, and they're actually intelligent.
Okay.
Okay, you can point a light at them and they'll move around, have no idea what they are. Then another thing we have down around here is a lot of triangular craft. They're big as football fields. We had down along 837?
837.
Yeah, 837 coming up the river.
Okay.
We was having not every night, but certain nights, a triangular craft coming up bigger than a football field.
Wow.
All right, we've had, I don't know how many reports on it, and it would come to a certain area and it would vanish. Okay, there's a government installation there, which I cannot talk about, but there's a government installation there. We figured that's where it was going. Like I said, we've had abductions. We had a lady that was abducted. She is former military. She was abducted while she was watching the Twilight Zone.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, she was watching the Twilight Zone. She was abducted. She was
And then
taken
she had
aboard.
her own Twilight Zone.
She was taken aboard the craft. She spoke with the aliens. She said they looked like us. They told her they would let her go back, but they kept the other person. This was at the time of Flight 370 was missing. Was that 370?
I'm not sure.
Malaysia Flight 370.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And they told her that they have the plane
Okay.
for her to tell the world. We had another abduction case where it started out as a regular investigation. And this was around the 4th of July last year. And the brother of the lady was actually a military man. And a triangular craft came, and the husband said, well, there goes the triangular craft, and then 2 jets came after it. And the guy that lived there says, well, there goes the F-14s, and the other one said, no, that's the F-16s that chased them. And they made the report, and the next day we got a call from the military to take his name out of the report, which we did.
Okay.
After speaking with John, we discussed it, and we did. But it turned out that whole family's been abducted.
Okay.
And we get a lot of reports where people see a couple landings here and there, and it's mostly lights in the sky.
Now, okay, go ahead.
Excuse me. Do you think they really have the plane? Because their relatives and friends are going to be worried. You know, they're worried about what happened to them and everything. And if they told this woman that they have their plane, don't you think everybody should know that?
Well, I agree.
Especially the
I agree.
family
I
and
mean,
friends?
I think she may be telling the truth. I mean, this thing just vanished off the earth.
Right.
I mean, you know.
They can't
Yeah.
find it anymore.
That's the,
Yeah,
that's the
I know.
question is how does a plane of that size disappear?
That's true.
No distress call, no
That's
cell phone
true.
calls, no transponder. It has a remote control that can take over the plane and it vanishes. So we don't know that it was taken by extraterrestrials, but until they can show me a crash site, where does a plane go?
Well, can
you've
they
also
interview
had-
this woman?
Huh?
Can they interview this woman to the
Who
world?
interviewed her?
Can you interview her?
Here
I
we
don't
did.
know.
You mean the
We
government that's
did.
looking for the
Plane. Yeah, they did.
Oh, she's talking about like.
I don't know if they did, but I know we did.
No,
Oh, you
We
did?
interviewed
they
her, yeah.
interviewed her.
Uh-huh. And,
Okay.
I mean, it
What
should
you're
be,
saying
it
is-
should be on national TV is what I mean.
No, well, see, the thing is, I mean, you know, when we get an investigation, we don't go on national TV. We
Right.
got what they call confidentiality.
Right.
If the person says that we can, you know, do it, then we'll
That's
do it.
different.
But if they want confidentiality,
Of
we do
course.
not give their name out.
And also, their life could be in jeopardy.
Right, right.
So,
Well, how about our audience tonight? They're going to be wondering if this woman really, I mean, if these aliens really took the plane.
well,
You know.
I can actually throw a little something
Yeah,
onto
please
that.
do.
Because actually, if we think about it, let's just say the plane was taken by,
Right.
possibly by extraterrestrials. I probably didn't say all that right, but correctly, but I would say this. we know that there have been disappearances of planes, people, and ships and boats.
In the Bermuda
Not just in the
Triangle.
Bermuda Triangle, but also in the lakes, I
Right,
understand.
right.
Even Lake Erie area.
Right.
And so there are these disappearances. So I believe it is a possibility. The only question that I would have is, what is the purpose, or did she get an answer as to what the purpose of keeping these people, like they said they would let this other guy go?
No, they would let
They
her
didn't-
go, but they kept
Right.
the other girl.
They would, yeah, they would let her go,
Right.
but they let somebody, they kept somebody, and if they took the plane, did they ever say why?
No, they didn't tell her
They
why.
never say why.
No.
Have you ever had any documentation where somebody had been abducted and spoke to the aliens and was actually given a reason? Have we had a reason yet?
There are a lot of, and there are a lot of cases
These are
where
speculative, but
when people come back or say they had an encounter or
we
an
may have another
abduction,
call, by the way.
and they say that, well, they came to tell us that we're destroying the planet and they're here
Right.
to stop nuclear war or
Right.
global warming, I don't believe those. I don't believe those, because I don't think that's the reason they're here. I think the person is putting their own beliefs onto this and wanting it to be that. I don't believe when they tell us that, because if that was the reason, they could do something about it.
like the
They wouldn't tell one person. They'd show up on CNN, they'd do something big to change it.
So you think that most UFOs are trying to be as secretive as possible?
Yeah, they have an agenda, whether it's to study us, whether to take DNA samples. When they tell one person something, why would you? Like, I could go down the street and tell one person something. What's that going to change? If you want to change something on the planet, you got to do something big. Telling one person doesn't prove anything. And when it becomes a cause like global warming, I don't believe those stories. They're not going to tell you about global warming. What are you going to do about it? So,
I mean, you got a point to it. I mean, I agree with you to a point, but maybe they're hoping that you would tell the public is the only thing you can figure. But let's, I would like George to give us some information on some of the experiences you've had, some of the investigations and research and what have you you've been involved with. Let us know a little bit about that, and then I have some other questions on here after we hear from George. So,
Yeah, a few months ago, MUFON decided to create an abduction research team. What we do is collect information and study it and look for patterns and try to come up with some explanations and reasons for what's been happening to these people. It seems as though there are different groups of extraterrestrial visitors that we have here that are showing up here. Some are with benign intent, and some probably have intentions that are not so benign. The literature on this is vast, and most of the information that we have has been obtained through regressive hypnosis, although a lot of the people do consciously remember most of the abduction event. And the abduction events can range from anything as benign as somebody just being taken aboard a craft, being shown around, and then let go, to extremely invasive and painful medical procedures. And these are kind of the ones that capture our interest, because basically what's happened, as John alluded to before, is these people have been kidnapped and raped.
right.
And they're basically defenseless against this.
Right.
And it happens repeatedly to the same people. There seems to be a genetic pattern to this, because the abductions are more common in families, more common in generations. They almost never abduct old people. Abductions will start usually in childhood and will continue periodically throughout a person's life. A lot of it, we think, is probably for the genetic harvest.
Okay.
That for some reason they're interested in our genetics, and they're creating alien hybrids for some reason. Exactly why, we don't know. But people have reported many times of seeing these alien hybrids on these vessels, and it's not just one person. It's hundreds and maybe thousands of people that come back with these things. So there is some credibility here,
Right.
just in the amount of documentation that we have. So we're interested in this. You know, I'm more interested in who's driving the plane rather than just
Right.
seeing the aircraft.
Right.
They're here for a reason. I mean, you wouldn't spend that much time and effort to come this far just to say hello. You know?
All right, so.
So they're here for a reason. Now, we're not really sure why they're here. It may just be the genetic harvest. Maybe they're interested in our DNA, or maybe the fact that we set off a nuclear device got their attention.
Yeah.
You know, the kids are playing with big toys now. Maybe we ought to go keep an eye on them. So you can make up a lot of different reasons why you think they're
Yeah,
here,
it's speculative.
but they are here. I have no doubt that they are, and we're trying to figure out why they're here.
How
All
are
right.
these people protected from these
You
abductions?
can't. There's
Really?
no protection. No.
Huh.
The aliens, the typical abduction scenario involves a change in consciousness of the person being abducted to where they're basically helpless, and then they're floated out of their environment into a craft. They do their medical deal up there on the craft, and usually send them back. That's the good news. Is
That's
they usually
scary.
get sent back. The bad news is they usually come back for them again.
That's scary.
Now,
Yeah,
you
these
said
people
they
are
don't,
terrified.
you said they don't usually go with older Americans. Do you have any idea why that may be?
Probably due to the genetic profile. You know, as we get older, our genes deteriorate a little bit.
Right.
The other reason is there may be a certain genetic profile that they're looking for. Because like I said, these abductions tend to occur along familial lines. They find a genetic strain that they like. And there's a chance that there are multiple generations involved with this in that family. It's very rare to have somebody abducted over the age of 30.
Wow.
It's rare.
I guess we're safe then.
And usually it's for reproductive material.
That's what I was wondering about.
So when,
they
when he says
probably-
it's not older people, because
But do they?
you're
don't
not producing
reproduce.
ovaries.
Let me ask you this: do they abduct more women than men? Is it mainly women, or is it about equal?
Well, it depends on which study you read.
Okay.
But
Well, are there any scientific conclusions?
generally it's pretty much across the board because they need both the male and the
Okay.
female
So they may
genetic
be actually
material.
kind of breeding them or something when they're on the ships. Then.
Yes.
Well, they,
Ooh, that's messed up.
they,
Now, you know,
they
it
also-
may have to do with, it could have been a one-way trip.
Right.
Maybe they left their planet for some reason,
Right.
their sun was supernovaing.
Right.
And it's a one-way trip.
That's
So
true. Could be
I do
anything.
believe there's a species very similar to us that could possibly just walk right down the street with you and you wouldn't know.
Right.
And I think
Nordic.
that group maybe they have to blend DNA so they can live here for some reason. Maybe it's the oxygen content. It could be anything. You know?
Interesting.
But there's been numerous reports of women becoming pregnant, and then after 3 or 4 months, they're not pregnant. no more.
Right. It just disappears.
Yeah, and, you know, they was abducted, they feel.
Right.
And then maybe 2 years later, they're abducted again, and they're showing one of the hybrids, and they said this is their child,
Right.
so.
That's pretty messed
So when you think about all those false pregnancies, you
Yeah.
probably know women that thought they
Right.
were pregnant,
Right.
and then the doctor says, well, it was a false pregnancy. Was
May
that
not have
what it
been.
was? Or
May not
did they
have
come back and take that fetus, and now they're raising it?
Well, let's work to get some calls. Remember,
It's a good
412.
question.
Ladies and gentlemen, remember to call 412-231-2288. All right, well, let me ask you this. This is kind of a hard question for all of you to answer, I guess. But do you feel that any of these quote unquote hostile species, the ones that are not friendly, do you think they're trying to essentially kill off humanity? Does any of you feel that they're here to take us out?
You know, I think that they don't want to just wipe us out, because that would be very easy, and I think they could have done it already. They could
Exactly.
easily just, you know, put
Right.
something in the air, poison the water. That could happen. I think they're dependent on us. They need something from us, whether it's the DNA material. That's why they can't kill us all off. So I think they're dependent. I think there's one species that's trying to crossbreed and create one that can live here. There probably is, just like there's hostile people.
Right.
And there are good people.
Right.
I absolutely believe there's multiple species. Now, this letter said there were 5 that were helping us. So
Right.
I don't know how many are not helping us.
Right.
And maybe these 5 are protecting us against
Right.
1 or 2 others. It's hard to say. You can speculate about a lot of things.
And there's also reports out there that state that they have a, what I want to say, a governing body.
Right.
Okay.
A governing body that kind of limits or directs the interactions of extraterrestrial people with us. There's kind of guidelines that they have that kind of sets limits on
So
what
do you
they're
think
allowed
there's
to do.
some kind of a,
I don't think yeah, like John said, if they wanted to take over the planet, we would have been gone a long time
That's
ago.
true.
It's not real hard to do to release a virus into the,
Right.
you know, into the atmosphere to kind of clean the place.
right,
So,
Or have a great flood.
or have a flood, right?
Here you go.
There's some value in us to certain
Right.
of these species out there, and they've come a long way to extract that value.
Let me add something else. I read a book from the 50s, and it's the first time I heard this. And he said, put your hand out. That's the Milky Way galaxy.
okay,
Earth is located in your pinky nail, and that's
Right.
because it's a spiral galaxy. That's where we are.
Right.
So think about it. The most advanced species that are here, thousands of light years away, those that need to leave the galaxy because they want to go to other galaxies, we're the place they go to restock, refuel, do whatever they need. We're the launching point to another galaxy. And
Okay.
that kind of makes a lot of sense. That might be why they stop here. Maybe there's no other place on these 2 fingers
Right.
of the spiral
Kind of the Howard
galaxy.
Johnson's
Yeah.
universe.
So they come to us, you know? It's a possibility. I never thought of it that way.
well, as long as we're not food, that's all I'm worried about. You
That
never
we
know
know
with
of.
food.
You
That we
never
know
know.
of.
We don't want to be food, you know, let them eat a Big Mac.
They'll never come back.
Hey, wait a minute, she ate a Big Mac once or twice. Not me, thank goodness. Well, any rate, now, I want to go kind of another direction here. I had you on a couple of months ago, as you remember, I believe it was April, no, actually I guess it was March.
March, yeah.
March time, around March. And I had a lot of negative feedback on the video over there at YouTube. So actually, there's a website here that I'm gonna have you like take a peek at when I'm done with this. But there was some kind of not nice questions. So actually, let me see. I'm trying to look over here and kind of see if there's anything that I think is worth mentioning here. Okay, well, we already covered the most recent Pittsburgh kind of UFO. So let's see. Okay, that was for the Dr. Albert, took care of that.
You know, while you're looking at that, let me just say that people that have
Oh, I want to ask you about Hangar 1.
Well, let me just say this first.
Go ahead.
People that have these negative comments,
Right.
it's usually because they don't know anything about this. They know very
Right.
little. And the one thing I found is that the more you look, the more you find, and you can lay it all out in a timeline, and it makes a lot of sense. So when people hear it and they say, well, I don't believe this, and that's not true, and people can't be abducted, you know what? Do a little research. And then when you look at it, you find that, yeah, this is real.
So it's sort of like the supernatural. You got your skeptics
With everything you
and
do.
people that don't believe.
Well, at any rate, anybody wants to call in, we're glad to answer your questions, 412-231-2288. And I want to ask you, has being on Hangar 1 help, hurt, or not affect any of your investigations?
Well, the effects have been, we've had a 10% increase in membership.
That's a good
We've
thing.
probably
That's
had
positive.
20% increase in cases being reported. We're getting a lot of the older cases coming in because now people know we exist, so they know
Right.
where to report them,
Right.
and they feel a lot more comfortable reporting it. But other than that, you know, I think as the show's on for a couple of years, you'll see maybe more of an acceptance in the mainstream.
All right. Well, I want to ask you now. The mainstream media looks at UFOs and even Ancient Aliens or Close Encounters or Hangar One or any of these other shows. They're kind of, I guess you would call, entertainment value or not to be taken seriously. So, and I guess most scientists, for the most part, the larger body of scientists, probably don't take UFOs all that seriously. So to justify credibility, although I don't feel you need to, could you tell us some of the types of members you have in MUFON? Do you have, for example, do you have any actual scientists in MUFON? And could you please, you, Fred, or George, tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, MUFON has a science review board, and it's made up of scientists, physicists. Probably the biggest name that you would recognize is Stanton Friedman. He's been on a lot of shows. He worked here in Pittsburgh. He was a physicist, a nuclear engineer, and he had lived in Shady Side at one time. But we do have a science review board. We have everybody from every walk of life. We have psychologists, we have orthopedic surgeons, we have doctors, we have lawyers.
You have psychiatrists?
Pilots, yes, we do. And we have the abduction research team that George is involved in. And so we may be a smaller group, but we make up every field out there. Absolutely every field. You name a profession, we got somebody from that. And
we're all over the world.
Now, how long has MUFON been around?
Since 1969.
So when was it, Project Blue Book closed?
It ended
The
December of
military-
'69.
The military theoretically closed the books on it, which we know is not true.
Right.
Okay, but you guys kind of took it up. Now, let me ask you this. To do all these investigations and to have the equipment and the scientific equipment and the research and everything, wouldn't that be pretty costly?
Yes, it would be, and that's that's one of the things we need. When you think about SETI, just take SETI alone.
Yeah.
Last week, SETI was before Congress. They wanted $4 million in funding.
All right.
Okay, MUFON gets zero funding from the government,
I
from
bet
grants.
You probably don't get a penny.
The only funding we get really are from our members, from merchandise sales, and now the TV show.
Right.
So really what needs to happen is, that $4 million, think about it. This organization said he wants $4 million to listen to radio waves over there.
Right.
Give them $3 million. Give us one. And we will put together a world-class report on abductions, on all the different categories, with the best witnesses, the best evidence, and present that like Project Blue Book, but done by us rather than by the government, so it's maybe a little more believable that the best cases weren't held out like Blue Book.
All right.
When I was a little kid in the 70s, Project Blue Book was a series.
I remember it.
Yeah, I watched it, and that's where I got my interest in UFOs and that. And I was really fascinated with it, even though I was little. And I just want to know, was the series canceled because it was a secret?
Well,
It's too much investigation.
it wasn't a
too
secret
much
because in
public.
1970 they reviewed Project Blue Book, and I think for those years there had been reports and other, findings presented. But Blue Book, as of 1970, was not a secret because everything was made public, and I think they picked up on that, and in '78 maybe they created this series. But mostly for television, it's because they think they can get some good ratings out of it, so it becomes a show.
But what's interesting about that is, according to Alan Hynek, Blue Book didn't get the good ones.
Right.
They didn't get the good ones.
What do you mean?
The good sighting reports. They were siphoned off by the Air Force.
Blue Book had 12,000.
I want to take a drink.
Blue Book had just under 13,000 cases.
All right.
Of those, they only investigated 50
All right.
out of 13,000.
That's
And the
ridiculous.
best cases, like George said, were deliberately not put into Blue Book. They were
Right.
held out.
Right.
But they still had 701 cases that they said were unknowns. We can't explain
So
what
the-
that is.
But
Those are
a
the
lot-
UFOs.
A lot of the cases they investigated too, they The government actually lied. They made it
Well, of
look like
course.
the people were actually crazy that made the, you take the chase with Portage County, whatever it was, Spar, when he came from Ohio into Pennsylvania, they chased it. You have 4 police departments involved in that, and Project Blue Book says it was Venus, which they all lost their job and, you know, the whole 9 yards, and that's what they really was doing. They, you know, they would say that what everybody was seeing was Venus, and there was no such thing, but, you know, they made it
So-
like that was their job.
And there were a
So-
lot of military people upset with the
Right.
tactics used by Blue Book because they were discrediting their own pilots, their own officers, airlines pilots. It was really a shame what they did. And like Fred said, a couple of those police officers from the ridicule quit and they lost their jobs.
Right.
But they told the truth.
John, you might have to help me with this, but in the 50s, there was a Robertson panel that was,
53.
that met, that included some national known scientists. And they were supposed to produce a report to advise the government on how to handle the UFO reports. And if I remember correctly, the recommendations of that panel were that, number one, that these things were probably real that people were reporting, but the best thing the government could do would be to obfuscate and ridicule the witnesses.
That's not good.
And,
So-
and but that attitude has persisted ever
Right.
since then.
Right.
It has persisted ever since. So still you hear people say, well, you know, I saw, something
Right.
in the sky. And the knee-jerk reaction of most of the public is to think that the person's
Right.
nuts. And it all kind of stems from that, I think, back in the 1950s, from that attitude.
Right.
And when we opened the show, I said in '79 these CIA documents were released.
Right.
In those documents, and nobody knew it at the time, was that 1953 Robertson panel was stacked with CIA-picked scientists.
Right.
So even though Captain Ruppelt, the head of Blue Book, said, I got all these, he presented the best evidence,
Right.
all of it. Even 2 films
Right.
that no one's ever been able to explain that clearly showed UFOs was all
Right.
kicked back to him by the scientists saying that it's all circumstantial evidence.
Oh,
But he didn't know it was stacked by the CIA. That's when the CIA got involved, was in 1953.
Okay.
And they've set the course on this, that we can't tell the people about it, and no matter who it is that comes forward and reports it, we're gonna make fun of you, we're gonna say, they said airline pilots were drunk. Think
Right.
about that, you're
That's
a
ridiculous.
30-year pilot with 50,000 hours,
Right.
you report a UFO, they said he was drinking on
Yeah.
the job. That's what they did back then, and it was a shame.
Yeah.
Well, in the 50s, it was the heyday of B movies about aliens and everything.
Right.
So how did those movies influence the UFO investigations and beliefs and everything? Do
I'll
they
tell you
have-
about one movie.
What's that?
That's The Thing from Outer Space.
Oh,
And what was very interesting about it, I think it was 1953, same time as the Robertson panel. But there
Right.
are a couple of scenes in the movie. There's one scene where they find the saucer, it's under
Oh, we
the
got a
ice.
call. We want to get moving.
Real quick, it's under the ice, and the reporter is talking to Captain Hendry about, he's going to call it in, and he goes, no, this is Air Force business. And he says, I have the constitutional right to call this in, I'm a reporter. He goes, no, you don't, this is Air Force, we'll tell you when you can make it public. That told you everything you needed
That's
to
true.
know.
That's true.
And that's what they did.
Yeah. Well, you know what? George didn't answer a call yet, right?
Yeah, I got the
Oh, you
first.
did. That's
Yeah.
Well, I thought you did last. How about you do this call?
Okay, caller, what do you got to say?
Hello, caller. Are you there?
Yes.
How are you?
Hey, Al, Tony.
Hey, is it Tony?
Yeah. Good show.
Oh, okay, good. Okay.
hi, Tony, where you been?
Don't say his last
I'm
name.
I
around.
didn't.
What's your question?
I just wanted to say you have the top guys in the field on your show,
That's true.
Thank you.
and they're doing a great job with the work they do, and I can listen to them for hours.
There
The
you
only
go.
question I have, I'd like Fred to comment on the Bigfoot, about their connection with the UFOs. They've been seen in the UFOs, if he can.
Have they been seen with UFOs?
Has
Yes,
Bigfoot been hanging
yes,
with
they
you?
have. As a matter of fact, I got a report today from Ohio from 1970 where a Bigfoot was seen with the UFO. Here in Pennsylvania, especially in Fayette County, Pennsylvania, back in the 70s, we have numerous reports of Bigfoot with UFOs, and actually all over the United States.
So what did you think, Tony?
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to it.
Have you ever seen one with a UFO?
No, but I've heard reports about it.
Okay.
Daryl Sims.
Yeah, Sims talks about abductees being on UFOs, and they see Bigfoot on a UFO a lot of times.
Right.
And we have a treat for you because Daryl Sims will be here in Pittsburgh November 8th speaking at the MUFON UFO conference at Westmoreland Community College on November 8th. So he's one of our speakers.
And MUFON is in fact a nonprofit, am I correct?
Yes.
So this event that you're talking about on November 8th, can you give us a little detail on that?
Yeah, it's November 8th. It starts at 9 a.m. It's at Westmoreland Community College in Youngwood, exit 75 on the Turnpike. The speakers are Daryl Sims, who's got a TV show that's out there right now, Nick Redfern, who you've probably seen on Ancient Aliens, and numerous other articles that he writes, myself, Fred, Brian Seach is speaking also. They're going to talk more on the Bigfoot side of things, and I'm trying to get Doc to talk a little bit. We'll see.
I think the doc
We'll
should
see.
be there. He should talk. Come on, speak.
And
You can
talk
do
about the whole abduction. But it,
No. You know,
Wait a minute. Tony, are
Wait a
you
minute.
still working there?
don't ask
Yes.
me.
Oh, okay.
You're not.
But it's our 7th annual conference. This is the 7th time we're doing this in the same
Now,
location.
do you have a website? People. Now you said Youngwood. Where in the world is that? Is it,
It's exit 75.
I mean, is it PA or Ohio?
No, Pennsylvania. It's
Youngwood,
where New
PA.
Stanton, the New Stanton exit, exit 75.
Okay.
And our website is MUFONPA.com.
MUFONPA.com.
PA.com.
But you're a nonprofit. Why is it not org? Out of
That's
curiosity.
the website they gave us.
Well, why didn't you fix it? Blame it on John.
It works,
Yeah.
so I'm happy.
All right. So
Hey,
it's
Tony, you still there?
MUFON.
Yes.
PA.com.
Yeah, one of the presentations will be UFOs and Bigfoot.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Okay.
And again, thanks for doing the show because there isn't too much outlets for this particular subject, and you do a great job of it.
Well, I was
Thanks.
Thank you.
afraid
Thank you.
for a minute, Tony, that nobody else was watching. Thank goodness you're there.
Tony, are you still working at the store?
Yeah.
Yeah,
said
yeah.
already.
Oh, because we haven't seen
Okay.
you around.
I'll see you
Don't ask
later, and good luck with
Sorry.
UFO hunting.
I didn't hear what you said, but Tony,
What'd you
I'm
say?
Good luck with UFO hunting to everybody there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh,
We'll
yeah.
see you, Tony.
Well,
Okay.
I'm gonna move on. I almost said move on, but that's all right. At any rate, now I tell you what, we got a little treat tonight. John in the control room, since we have John right here. If you could pull up one or two of those surprise photos, we'd really appreciate that. Maybe you could throw them all up there. And John over here, John Ventry, explain what we're looking at.
Well, that was a picture sent to me from Pittsburgh, a man here in Pittsburgh who has a PhD and served in the military, and I believe he was a nuclear scientist. He took these pictures over the Pittsburgh airport, and you see a structured thing in the sky there
Right.
that he reported to us as a UFO. So there you can see that one's a little bit bigger. You can see that one. That was one locally that came in from, it was right over by the airport.
So what do you think that is actually, if you had to give an educated guess?
Well, to me, it looks like something that has structure to it. So the problem we got is that, you have to pay somebody to do video analysis and
exactly.
get everything done. So we save our funds for the bigger cases, and that's why I said if we can get some funding, if the government would give
Right.
us some money,
Now-
then you get a world-class report on this.
Now,
Which
when I was on
airport?
Right here, Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh Greater International?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because there's one in West Mifflin.
Yeah,
There's
that's
a
the
small one.
international airport.
Is that all the pictures, or did we miss one?
You had a few other pictures that
Okay.
I had sent in to you.
Okay, John, if we have any other photos, could you show them now? If you were able to find any other ones? Okay, and this is the
That's
same?
the same one, yeah.
Okay.
Those three were all of the same one that he
Oh,
took
okay.
those pictures.
That's
but-
probably all that that's
Okay.
all I saw in the
Okay.
email. All right, well, thanks, John. We'll go back to a live shot. Thanks a lot. Well, then let me say that I was looking at this, and I haven't really asked you most of these questions, but one of the complaints that I found on feedback from the last show was that some people claimed they had sent a form to MUFON, and that they had asked for an investigation, and that there was officers that had witnessed it, and there was FDA radar, and no investigation was done. So my question to you is, what criteria is met, or how do you decide, because you do have limited funds, and you're not getting rich off this. So how do you decide what constitutes doing a, I guess, in-house investigation versus on-location investigation?
If a
How does that
UFO
work?
report is called in, there will
Right.
be an investigation.
Okay, so
we,
then.
we make contact on every single case.
Okay.
We assign it within
48
48 hours. We make
Yeah.
So let
contact
me
with them.
ask you outright. The stuff that I received feedback-wise on YouTube, do you think a lot of it is BS? Without being ignorant,
What
do you think that
happens-
maybe it's BS?
What happens is the person.
We lost the light,
The
by the
person
way.
sees something, Albert, and they see something, and then
Right.
when we're able to do the investigation, and it turns out that that was a satellite, that
Right.
was something,
get
80% of
upset.
them, they don't like the answer.
Okay.
You know, they get upset, and I think the case you're referring to, I'm familiar with it. We spent time with that person, and they were seeing airplanes and helicopters. That's
Okay.
what they were seeing.
Well, the reason why I mentioned that is I really don't know who these people were. They had screen names.
So they're disappointed?
And
They don't want to accept that they didn't see a UFO,
Right.
but they're not
Yes.
all UFOs.
Right.
You can't
And-
believe every case.
And Albert, another thing, I mean,
Go ahead.
you know, a lot of people see UFOs every night.
And they see them in their
Every night,
dreams.
every night. They come out at 9 o'clock and
Right,
they're
exactly.
gone back by 10:30,
Right,
okay?
right,
Now,
right.
if this was the case, we wouldn't be investigating. The military would actually have
Right.
that place cordoned off,
Of course.
okay? And again, I think that they get very upset because this is how we look at it. I mean, you know, we'll do an investigation here, and we've done an investigation.
Right.
And like John says, they get upset because we don't go along with their
Right.
philosophy.
You don't buy what they're smoking. You put it in the
Now, they're
next
not
bag.
smoking, it's what they're drinking.
Well, I was being.
But you know,
go talk to Bigfoot.
the important ones would be,
Right.
we get too many cases that it's just a high-flying light moving fast.
Right.
You know, they could be planes, they could be a lot of different things. An asteroid, the only one I ever saw, when I investigated, it turned out to be an asteroid. Really, when I read these cases, I'm interested in the ones below cloud
Okay.
level, that
'Cause
you
they're closer.
actually saw a craft. Not that you saw a fast-moving light, and, you know, there's so many things that could
So
be.
let me ask you this, because we only have like 5 minutes left.
Al thought he saw UFOs already.
Back in the day, yeah, but I didn't
No,
report
just
it.
recently you thought you saw.
About 3 or 4 months ago, I think I may have seen one.
Report it to MUFON.com.
I can't remember it now. It's old and tired, but at any rate. Now you made me mess up my train of thought and I lost the
Sorry,
train.
sorry.
Well, I want to ask you, do you feel that any UFOs have ever killed anybody? In your opinion? Did any of you think that they ever killed
Well,
anybody?
if you
We
look
have
at,
only about 2.5 minutes left.
again, if you look at it, all right, now, we
Right.
spoke about this the
Cattle
last time.
mutilations.
Huh?
Cattle mutilation.
Cattle mutilations and human mutilations.
That's
We
true.
spoke about it.
But you did have human mutilation.
Right, we got human mutilations
Yeah, well,
too.
that's killing somebody.
And if you, I mean, down in Brazil is where most of this stuff's really happening. If you read some of that stuff down there, I mean, they're actually bamming them with beams and everything else down there. I mean, it happens here too, but nobody reports it, and
Right.
if they do report it, it's covered up as soon as it's reported.
You know, you had that case in Russia, Diathlon Mountain. Remember
Right.
that one? Those
And
hikers
we only have
up
about
there.
30 seconds.
They're all dead, all their bones broken.
Right.
Ooh,
You
that's
know,
not good.
there was one I just read in England too, with some investigators. Two teenagers. They found them, they were skinned,
That's
their eyes
messed
were
up.
taken, everything.
Ew.
You know, so,
So they are killing some of
yeah,
us.
and all these abductions, a
Right.
lot of these people are never found.
Right,
But
never
that's a
come back.
rarity
There
to
are a lot of
the,
different, there are a lot of disappearances in this
Right.
country every year that are
true.
unexplained. So where did they go?
Right. And the plane disappearing.
Where did they go? Where did
Well,
these people go?
Was that the exception to the rule about the mutilating humans and cattle?
That's rare.
Yeah, well, that's
Okay,
not
we
to
only have
know.
like 5 seconds
Yeah.
left.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we're going to be going. Let me ask you this: Would the three of you be willing to come back for a third round in the future?
Yeah, certainly.
You definitely be interested. How about you? Would you be interested, George?
I'll come back.
Okay, sounds good. Well, maybe we can book that in September or something. But in the meantime, everyone, remember that you and humanity
Humanity,
and all
really.
forms of life. I don't know about the UFOs, but the rest of you really does matter.